Hi everyone, welcome to this video. I am Natasja and today I am going to go deeper into the devil card dynamics combined with some other cards and what messages they convey and how you can interpret these cards. But first off, I'd like to thank all of my new viewers and subscribers for joining, and I hope your time on my channel is time well spent. Now let me begin with the first set of cards. This is an actual reading and some components of that reading again convey a real important message. This is a 3-card reading and the first card is the Page of Cups. The Page of Cups is about emotions, but pages are not very adult, they are not very grown up, so they have trouble regulating their emotions. They may be over emotional, they may be codependent, there may be issues issues regarding dealing with their own emotions, so they may have fits or very childlike emotional behavior, not fully emotionally developed. So that are characteristics that you could relate to this Page of Cups. Now, if you combine this Page of Cups with the Devil card, you get another issue, because I've already mentioned codependency in regards to the Page of Cups. This dynamic is a dynamic of codependency and narcissism. Like I explained in my previous video about the Devil card, narcissists attract codependents and codependents attract narcissists. So if you see these two cards together, they may very well mean that there is a narcissistic element going on or a codependent element, especially if this is representative of the questioner. So if you have this card laying in a position that represents the questioner, and this card is in close proximity or in the layout related to this card, then this could seriously mean toxic relationships and the need to overcome that, to internally grow up, internally heal your emotional wounds, and become emotionally mature in order to escape this dynamic. The next card in this reading is the Ten of Wands. Now, if you see these 3 cards together, you get a very clear picture that this situation is a heavy burden for this Page of Cups to carry. They are in a situation that weighs very heavily on them. They find it extremely hard to escape this situation, mainly because of the childlike or not totally developed, fully developed, grown up emotional tendencies that are here, because that is the tool that is being used. And it's also the tool that makes it very difficult to escape this situation, because you don't have the emotional strength, the emotional wisdom, and to garner yourself and to get out of this situation, because this card is a signifier of a situation that is a heavy burden, but it is also a situation that the advice would be to drop this burden. This can also indicate that you are carrying someone else's burdens, and especially related to this Devil card and combined with the Page of Cups, this could mean that this person is carrying the burdens that are put there by this narcissist person or this narcissist dynamic. So it requires a lot of insight. The reason why I do these explanations for these cards is because narcissism codependency dynamic is very, very common these days. Narcissism is cultivated in our Western society, and codependents are being thought of as the bad guys, the black sheep, the victims, the weak ones. So in our society at large, there is already a very narcissistic codependent dynamic going on, because the narcissist doesn't have the ability to look inside himself to see where he goes wrong or should change his behavior. The only one who can do that is the codependent, and the codependent does that, but they do it in such a manner that they kind of use it in a wrong way, because they don't use it to empower themselves to get out of the situation, but they usually use these introspective qualities to explain why the other person is doing what they're doing and how they are right for doing what they're doing. So in fact, the codependent is often making excuses for the narcissistic behavior of the other person. And that is how a codependent can become trapped. Now, if I relate this to some other cards that were in the same reading, the outcome, whenever you find this card combined with this card, especially in relationship with the other cards that are mentioned, then there is a call to heal these aspects that are being woken up by this dynamic. Usually, if you are a codependent, you will find yourself over and over and over again dealing with narcissists in one way or another. And as long as you haven't healed these wounds that the narcissist uses to manipulate you, they will always be able to latch on to these wounds, manipulate you, and there you are again entrapped, entangled in the web of the narcissist. Every time this happens, you have an opportunity to look inside yourself, use some of your introspective qualities to go inside yourself and see what aspects of myself are not healed yet. Why am I being triggered again to look at this dynamic? Because this dynamic can only happen if you haven't healed fully. So this is a call of looking, or rather getting the opportunity to look into the aspects that need healing before you are able to move on. Because if you know, the judgment card is followed by the world card or the universe in some decks, and that means the completion of a cycle. You could also view that as the completion of a reincarnation cycle, but you can also view that as the completion of this narcissistic cycle, if that is prevalent in your reading. Now, whenever you arrive at the judgment card, you have the opportunity to look at things that still need to be resolved before you can finally close the cycle in the world card. If you are not able to do that, you will skip the world card, you will move through the fool card and eventually end up at the magician card, which means that you are beginning this cycle all over again. No conclusion, no world card, but beginning again, because it isn't fully resolved yet. And that means that you will find yourself in the earthly realm dealing with, this is the representative of working in the 3D, working with the 4 elements to resolve things. So this means, if you find this combination of cards, this means that you are being again transported to the beginning of a cycle, to work out in 3D, in the real world, in this material realm, this dynamic. Because if you don't do it at the moment that arrives with the judgment card, you will have to struggle your way again through this process of the major arcana again. And that means that you probably will be again confronted with more narcissistic dynamic. Now, this does not only apply to narcissistic dynamics, but you can see this narcissistic dynamic as an example of things that need to be healed in order to reach closure, which is that world card. If you are not able to reach that closure, you will end up at the beginning of the cycle. You will end up at the Fool card, you will end up at the Magician card, depending on where you are. The Fool card would signify that you are totally unaware still and running into situations head over heels without thinking, without contemplation about what it would entail. And the Magician is one step further. They realize that they need to do something about it, but they are doing it in the outside world. This is the card not so much of introspection, but more of dealing with the 4 elements, working the world in order to solve an issue. So this could mean trying to change your circumstances. This could mean looking at your feelings, looking at your thought patterns, looking at how you create your own life, your own situations. And that still is a way of dealing with it, but again, resolving this situation of codependency, you need to look at your own part, your own role. What are you contributing to this situation? How are you, as an empath or codependent, enabling this situation? What elements are there that need to be healed, that need to be looked at? And I really wish for all empaths and all codependents to overcome this dynamic, because if you heal it in the small, you will also heal it in the larger scope, which means if all of us that are entangled in these kind of situations are able to heal our own situation, in effect we will heal the world with it. And this is pretty much the task that most empaths are here for, is to heal this aspect, to transmute it, because we are the only ones who can change this dynamic, because we are the only ones that possess the ability of introspection. But we need to do it right. We need to do it in such a manner that it causes healing instead of enabling this situation to persist. Now, that is the biggest lesson for us to learn. And if we are not able to heal it, it will persist in the 3D world, in the world of the 4 elements. Now, you can ask yourself, what is an empath or codependent to do to break this dynamic? Because it's all nice and dandy that I'm talking about this, but you still don't have a clue what to do to break this dynamic. And honestly, it is a struggle for most of us. But there's one thing that I can tell you from the cards, and I'm going to get some different cards. These 2 cards, we have already addressed this card, carrying the burdens of others, with the inherent advice of not to do so, because it will break you. It will stagnate your own development. You will run up against a wall because you are carrying loads that aren't yours. The narcissist is a master of making you feel crazy or making you feel guilty for the things they do. That is their main trick. So that consequently will lead to this situation where you as an empath or codependent will be carrying all the guilt, all the worries, all the shame, all the, you are internalizing it even, and then you are kind of creating your own bondage. Because if you look at the posture of this person, it is quite similar to this person. They are all curled up in a fetal position, not able to move because of the trappings of this cage, which is their own cage of limiting beliefs, and it is made up of the wants of guilt, shame, and all these things that the narcissist manages to talk you into believing that it is yours. So the first advice is to leave this baggage where it belongs, isn't it? It is not your responsibility to heal someone else. It is your responsibility to heal yourself, and with healing yourself, you heal the situation. So the first step is to lay down all the guilt that people tell you that you should feel because of, what's going on in your life. Well, you should have done something that made him do that. He's probably got good reasons for treating you this way. Things like that. We can tell that ourselves, we can tell it each other, and we are also enforcing this dynamic when we do so. Another thing is the emotional maturity. Again, I relate that to this Page of Cups, where this card gives the advice to outgrow a certain situation emotionally. It is much like if you want to quit smoking. You know smoking is bad for you. You know it's dangerous for your health. You can feel yourself coughing each morning and thinking, oh man, I gotta quit. But I'll quit tomorrow because now I need my cigarette and my cup of coffee. Before you really emotionally are ready to quit, before you are ready to quit, you need to be emotionally ready to quit. You really need to have this emotional feeling that says, you know what, this doesn't belong to me anymore. This is not who I am. I am better than that. I have outgrown this situation. This is a learning process, but it is also about not getting emotionally involved in situations. Again, that is one of the major tricks of this devil card. Getting you emotionally hung up on things that keep you tied, keep you locked up in this golden cage, keep you carrying on burdens that aren't yours. So you need to detach emotionally. If you do that, the manipulations of this person suddenly don't have as much effect as they used to. Because it is your emotions that they are working on to get you to do what they want you to do. So if you are able to let the guilt and the shame and the responsibilities where they belong, you can detach yourself emotionally. You don't have to internalize all these wants of pressure and shame and the burden that you're carrying. You can say, you know what, this isn't mine. Why should I be carrying this? Let me just carry what is mine. And then you can detach yourself emotionally and walk away. Emotionally, it doesn't mean that you escape the situation physically. If you are in an abusive relationship with a narcissistic personality, if you want to escape that, you need to be very, very careful, because narcissists are very, very vindictive, and once they get the idea that you might be leaving, they will try to destroy you before you get to it. So you really need to be very, very careful on how you deal with that. But emotionally detach yourself and find out that his manipulations, mostly his, sometimes her, will no longer affect you. You can see through the shenanigans. You can see, so you're now trying to press my buttons here so that I give this knee-jerk reaction, and then you got me exactly where you want me, namely in this cage, feeling helpless and guilty. Once you see through that dynamic, you are going from the Page of Cups to the Knight or the Queen or the King of Cups, depending on how your development goes. But this is very much about growing up, outgrowing a situation emotionally, no longer being entangled in it, and saying, you know what, I can leave this where it's at because it's not mine. Again, it is very similar to the advice in this card. Leave the burdens where they belong. Don't take burdens that aren't yours to carry. It is about growing up emotionally and growing up in a sense of self-worth. And of course, a narcissist will break you down to the core if they get the chance. So the sooner you realize what you're dealing with, the sooner you can detach yourself emotionally. You can say, you know what, this isn't my responsibility, this isn't my burden to carry. And then you are growing up, then you are maturing, then you are actually becoming a queen or a king instead of a page. So, and in the larger scale, again, I want to address this dynamic of the Judgment card, the absence of the world, or the Fool, depending. I mean, they can be in a reading, but if you see the cards that I just showed you, all of these cards in one reading, you should have a pretty good idea about what is going on, what dynamic. And of course, the order of the cards, the placement and the relation to each other can change the situation up a bit. But we're dealing here with 3 major arcana, which this is the core of the matter. Narcissistic situations that need to be healed and resolved. If you don't, you'll end up dealing with them again. And again, and again, and again, until the last segment is healed. And the way to healing is, first realizing that you contribute to the situation. Your behavior, your reactions also play a part in this dynamic. You cannot totally blame the narcissist. Of course, their behavior is very toxic, but you are enabling it as long as you are staying in that dynamic. And sometimes you don't know better, and there's no one to blame for that. But once you do know better, you have the opportunity now to work on yourself, make sure that your wounds are healed, the wounds that are being used to trigger you. And the best way to do that is to leave the guilt where it belongs. Let no one tell you where you should be feeling guilty or bad about. Leave the situation emotionally behind. Sometimes you cannot get out physically, but then you will have to get out emotionally to detach yourself. That will give you a much clearer view of what's actually going on. Your eyes will open up to this dynamic, and you possibly, hopefully, see what elements in yourself need healing, so that you can move on and hopefully do it in such a way that you can heal everything that needs to be healed, so that you will finally get to this world card, this closure card, where you have once and for all slayed this dragon, once and for all dealt with this issue, so that it doesn't have to come back in your life again and again and again. So I hope this gave you a bit of an insight in the dynamics of narcissism, codependency, cycles in the tarot. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about this. So I wish you an amazing day, and I hope to see you again. Bye bye.